Howdy guys, it's Luke at Luke's Affordable Paint Service, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do broken ice effects and frozen lakes. Right, so the one you've all been waiting for, frozen lakes, ice and all that shite. This video is on frozen water and moving water effects, alright guys? Now, the reason I've done this whole diorama over these 6 videos is literally just because I was very unconfident in doing snow, just like ice in general. It's something that I've always looked at and found really impressive, and I couldn't get my head around how I'd do it. So I went delving on the internet. I found a few forums. I went and asked a few people on Facebook. Nobody wanted to help me at all. It was for trade secrets, what I get most of my work off, and I was like, right. So I just sat and I studied. I literally sat and studied the pictures, okay? And this is how I've come up with how I do it with the materials I've got and the knowledge I've got, alright? So I might be a million ways off how the pros are doing it, but it's a way that I found that works, and it's quite convincing. It needs some work. It is only my first attempt, and again, like with the whole snow thing, I've literally gave myself a week to learn snow, and this is what I've come up with in a week, alright? So a lot of things I'd do differently next time, but we'll discuss that at the end of the video. Alright, now this video, guys, it's going to be quite a bit longer. It's going to be quite a lot of information. Now, it's more to do with drying times of the resins and perfect times to do the next steps and everything else, guys. So if you are planning on doing this the same way as me, grab yourself a pen and paper and just take some bullet notes, okay? Because there's a few little bits that I'd rather you write down, and because you might have to keep watching video otherwise, alright? But we'll get the camera down, we'll get cracking. It's going to be a bit longer than usual, but we'll wrap it all up at the end, and I'll tell you what I'd do slightly different and everything else, alright? So I'll see you in a bit. Right, I didn't record me actually making the ice. It's so simple, guys. Just literally get yourself a chopping board, put some cling film on it, pour the resin, let it go off overnight, okay? Now, what you've got is a texture of the cling film that's been stretched over the chopping board, okay? So when you look at it, it looks like broken ice. It sort of looks like there's water underneath it, lapping on it already. It's got some interesting details on there. If you wanted it smooth, you could just pour it on the glass, okay? Next up, we've got to make ourselves a jig so the resin won't pour out, okay? So what you do is you just find some material. You could use MDF, you could use, I'm using Foamex, which is EPVC. It's just easy to cut with your knife and easy to work with, that's all. It's a bit dear, but it's good to cut with a knife at home, okay? Now, just score it once or twice, and then it should just, you know, crack, or you can cut it 3 times to break it off. And just make sure that you cut 3 lengths. It doesn't have to be exactly the right size or anything else, because you put 1 length on and bottom up anyway. Now next up, I'll just get some sellotape. Now this is the actual barrier that you actually use properly, okay? Now literally don't cut this into strips, just literally put it around all the area that you need to mask off. So if it were just a river and you've got 2 ends, obviously cut 2 strips, okay? Now put that on, make sure it's well stuck and it's well on there, but leave a gap at the bottom so you've got some board showing. Then what you do then is you run a bead of hot glue to stop any sort of resin dripping out of that. Now I use polyester resin, and with it being clear cast resin for encapsulations and everything, it's very thin, okay? Whereas a lot of people use polyurethane resins, which are quite thick, so you won't have to go this far if you was using a polyurethane resin, okay? And all you've got to do is the jig that we've made out of the Foamex is literally just stick that on, okay? Now, if the corners are not marrying up because we've not cut it straight, which I can't cut straight for toffee, I really can't. As you can see, there's a right gap there. All you've got to do is get the hot glue gun and then just blend that in, okay? So you use the hot glue as a sealant. If you want to be extra safe, just run a bead underneath as well, okay? So this is where the magic happens. This is the clear cast resin I use from CFS Fiberglass. I buy this in 5 kilo tins. It costs about 40 quid delivered. Sounds like a lot of money, but 5 kilos of the stuff goes an awfully long way, okay? If you put that in comparison to Woodland Scenics, you get 200 grams for 20 quid, so that makes sense, okay? Now, you can buy it in smaller tins as well, guys, okay? Now, I mix this to 100 grams to 3 grams of catalyst. You can mix it to 1% catalyst, okay? So 100 grams to 1%. But the problem is, when you mix it like that, it takes a lot longer to dry. So I use 3 grams, probably the maximum you'd mix it. Now, I've mixed 200 grams of resin to 6 grams of catalyst. This way, I know I've got about 20 to 30 minutes playtime with it, and it'll cure over the course of 3 hours. And that's how quick this stuff sets with the fast catalyst, okay? So if you do order some of this stuff, order the fast catalyst, not the standard catalyst, because if you mix the standard catalyst at 1%, it can take up to 3 days to dry, okay? Now, simply just pour your resin in as is, not all of it, just enough to cover all the areas, and quite a high pour, and all that does is stops any sort of air bubbles and everything from getting out. Make sure it's on a level surface, like an idiot. My little stand that I've made isn't level, obviously, so just make it as level as you possibly can, guys, okay? But it self-levels this stuff, it's brilliant with it being very thin. You get a really nice thin layer. Now, with the remaining resin that you've got left, I like to add white paint to that now. Now, I don't like adding inks for ice effect. Inks give it a too pure a white taint. With paint, you have the grains in the paint. Now, that looks like, when you look at it, when you pour it in, it looks like the thawing of the ice, not thawing, wrong word, the ice freezing underwater. Okay, you know how you get like the spines and stuff going through the water. It sort of creates that effect because of the grains in the paint. So that's why I use paint over inks when trying to create this ice effect. Literally just pour that in, put a couple of drops. If it's not bright enough, you know, if you want to make it a bit brighter, add a bit more paint. And if you've got enough resin in there as well, you can actually pour the paint into the diorama as it is, which I'll show you in a second, and just keep that moving it around with the tongue depressor, and you'll start to see it taking place and creating a really nice frozen water effect. Keep it near the banking, and obviously you want it to be more frozen at the banking as you do towards the centre. Alright. Right, so once that you're happy with that, leave that to stand for about half an hour. It should start turning to jelly, and it should resemble that, okay? Now, as the resin turns to a jelly, it's perfect timing to put your ice on now, okay? Because it'll hold it in place, because you want the ice to be above water level, so you get that separation, okay? Now, this stuff, I can't snap it by hand in the big sheet, it just bends in half. So I try and keep cutting it till it'll fit in something like. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys, because we're going to be putting snow on the banking later, which will hide the gap, okay? Which, when I went to cut this, I snapped it into about 7 pieces, so I just patched it in as I liked, but it gave a nice broken ice effect, okay? So get loads of pieces and literally sit them on top. It won't sink in because it's not, you know, it's not a fluid anymore, it's like a firm jelly. So if you want to push any bits into it, you can do. It holds stuff in place very well, okay, which you'll see me poking some ice in, and you can see how I press down on the back then just to lift it up a bit. You've got plenty of play time at this point. This is when it's starting to cure the resin. Alright, now the best way to see if your resin's ready the cup that you poured the resin out of, always keep a little bit left in there so you can keep testing that bit rather than touching your diorama, because you don't want to leave a fingerprint in this because it'll be there for life otherwise. But literally break a load of pieces off, be as arty as you want with this, try and just create as nice broken ice as little or as much as you like. Next up, I sprinkle some ground acrylic snow flock, which Luke's APS and Geek Gaming will be bringing out with the flock range. Okay, it acts as a very nice ice debris as well, and it glistens, so it really works. As you can see, it's slightly glistening on the camera. Now, after about 3 hours, perfect time to start taking off your jig. Okay, now the resin isn't totally cured yet. It's not, you can't touch it yet as such, but it holds its shape, so you can demold it at this point and take it all off. It's just easier to demold at this moment in time rather than when it's completely set. The sellotape stops it sticking to the plastic rim. Now, this is a precision flock applicator that I've made myself. I don't have it plugged into anything or out at the moment, but what I've done is I've made this so I can precisely put the snow on. In a couple of days there'll be a video up showing you how I made it. I can actually use it with my flock box, so I can have static grass in small areas without getting snow everywhere or flock everywhere. That's the whole point of it. It's just a tube with some flock, so I can get flock on there neatly without getting it loads of places I don't want it. Now, the resin is rather tacky at the moment, so it will hold most of it in place. I do blow it back just to get it to a point where it's not encroaching too much onto my ice work, because I don't want to hide all the work that I've just done. But I just keep applying snow till I'm happy, and then we attach it with a bit of varnish, which I'll show you how to do that in a second. Right, so as you can see, it's really starting to come together now. Okay, now we need to lock all this work in place. Now, get yourself like an envelope or a piece of paper and protect that piece of exposed water area, because you don't want to spray that with varnish. And then lift the spray from above 2 or 3 times, just to make sure it's all completely sealed in place. And while that is still damp, the varnish, literally just put a bit more flock on if it's moved a little bit or caused any unnatural appearing areas, and it'll just hide it, and that'll hold it all in place. Okay, and then that's what you're left with. Now, if you want it to be rather still water, you could just leave it as it is now. Okay, now I'm going to be making the water slightly active, so it looks like there's some activity pulling the ice through the bits that I've got sticking out the darker areas. So this is what it looks like now. If you're happy with it as it is, you could leave it at this point. There's no further steps required apart from just leaving it another 12 hours or so to cure properly. But as you can see, it's really starting to come together. Next step is just literally adding some active water effects, which I'll do in a second. Now, for the active water effects, I'm going to be using Mod Podge Gloss. Make sure you use Mod Podge Gloss, guys. You could use Gloss Medium Gels. I find them a bit too heavy for delicate waves. Alright, so that's why I'm using the Mod Podge. Now, when you're putting the Mod Podge down, make sure you put it down thick enough so it's not transparent but not too thick. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, as you can see, as I'm putting down, I'm putting slight waves in with the brush, And what we do is with the thicker areas that I've got, I come back in later with the airbrush and then just blow them in the direction that I want them. Now, if you haven't got an airbrush, just blow through a straw to get the same sort of desired effect. Alright, so I'll just show you now how I'm doing it with the airbrush. If you want to do it with a straw, just repeat this process, but you'll have to blow and feel a bit lightheaded. The airbrush is running at around 20-25 psi. It's not very high, it sounds it because it's sped up, that's all. But literally just blow that into the direction to create really nice steady waves, and then once this is dry, I'll show you around the dial. Now, when that's dry, it's hard to catch the look of the waves in this light. I'll try and catch them in a second. But as you can see, it's not complicated as such. It's getting all the timings of when it's safe to put the ice on and things. But as you can see, if you sit and watch it and you have some resin in a cup, you can achieve something like this. Okay, and as you can see now, that'll show you the active water. It's very steady. I might touch in some white effects later on, but I'm happy with how it looks now. I'm happy to leave it. I've learnt something. I've got a lot to learn, but I hope you guys can take from this and produce some nice ice and water effects. Right guys, so that's it. If any of you guys have messed with ice and water effects like this before, and you've had some different finishes, or it went completely wrong even, but something happened in that mistake that you're like, oh, I like that, send me an email with your pictures and just as much information I can collate on broken ice or ice and water effects would really help, because this week, asking people and talking to people, it's been the most unproductive week and most unhelpful I've found the whole community. People are normally like, yeah, it's just like this, and this. It comes to ice and water and people are like, well, it's me work, man. It's like, yeah, you're still going to get it if you're good. Do you know what I mean? But people don't want to be helping. So any info of people trying this and doing things a different way to what I've done, just email me. We'll collate all the info, and when I get a bit better using some of your tips that you've done and it's worked really well or not worked very well, but this has happened really well, we can put it all together, and when I get a bit better I can do a really good video on ice and water effects. Alright, so the better I get with your guys' helps and whoever might want to help out that they didn't want to help out originally, that would all come together and help a lot, okay? Because ice isn't something that people cover so much on the internet, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because it is complicated, alright? But anyway, get that out of the way. The things that I'd do slightly differently if I were doing this is I'd glue the ice in place and I'd fix it to the height that I wanted first, okay? Because with it being cloudy white underneath anyway, you could put supports in. So I might do that, and then you can actually raise the water, the resin, to the height that you want, and I'd do the ice a bit thicker as well next time, so you can see it a bit easier. Best thing about that, I can do that for any scale, okay? So say you've got like a 7-inch figure, I could do some seriously thick ice that's broke up, or I could do all sorts like that, you see now. But now I know how to do it. So put in the comments what you think. If you've got any ideas, like I say, you can email me, drop your comments below. Any help, any info, negative, positive, whatever, it's all going to help, because this part of the industry, snow and ice, needs help, because there's nowhere on the internet showing you how to do it at all, as in I can't find anything. So yeah, let's nail it together, and we'll maybe in 6 months' time, when I've got a bit better, we'll be doing another like comprehensive video on ice and water effects. Alright guys, if you've liked this series, do tell me. I know a lot of you are really liking it, and I will start doing it on different styles as well. So we might go down an arid theme, we might go down a grassland theme, we can do all sorts. Whatever you guys think, we can have a go at. Even sci-fi, why not? You know what I mean? But thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If there's any info that you need, do ask, and I will reply where I can. Yeah, and if you want to support the channel, check out Geek Gaming. The affiliates, they're below. And if you want in cheaper gaming stuff and all that, like materials for your hobby, remember Luke's APS is a product code, and every time you buy something from there, it supports the channel and keeps me afloat. Alright guys, so thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you again for the next video.